So it's been a while since I've done a proper theory video, and I actually think I'm going to start doing theory videos in this format again, so I can do funky cartoon stuff, which I've really been missing. And what better thing to theorize about, aside from all of the things you guys probably want me to theorize about, other than one of my original hyperfixations, Pokemon. The new Pokemon games are out, and I have finished playing through the story content that is available in them so far. I have also reviewed them already, and I think they're fairly solid games. They could definitely use more post-game, and I would have preferred they roll out with fewer glitches, but I think they're genuinely fun, and they build the world a lot. In subtle ways, too. Subtler ways than you might expect. In fact, something that I've been wanting to talk about a lot is, since I've played the games, and was reminded to do so relatively recently when I was looking for Dunsparces in Area Zero to try to evolve into a 3-segment Dunsparce. Don't subject yourself to that, by the way. It's really not worth it. Because while I was down there, I saw this metal plate. Again, I saw it on my way down the first time, and I'd probably seen it a couple other times and just didn't think about it. But I saw it again, and I made a note that I wanted to talk about it. Because this metal plate is placed here as if very intentionally by the people who have set up their various research camps down here in Area Zero. But it's also shown being discovered in the mysterious Scarlet, or Violet if you have Violet version, book, which is sort of the precursor to this whole section of the story, foreshadowing it and giving hints as to what it's all about. And looking into it, I was reminded of something else by looking at the Scarlet book again. Because if you look, the pages within the Scarlet book in-game have these little symbols in the corners. Those are the same 4 symbols that show up in the corners of the logo for the game. And one of them is very clearly a different version, a more rounded off version of the symbol on that metal plate. Or one of them, anyway. This got me thinking about those symbols, which I had thought about before, but figured they were just kind of, set dressing or whatever. And it turns out, all of them can be found elsewhere in-game. Something resembling this hexagon symbol can be found in the Scarlet book here, during a segment about the author having some sort of fever dream or something. This symbol can be found on the ground in Area Zero, marked into the ground, and also a picture of it was taken by the explorers who wrote the Scarlet book and included within its pages. And this symbol here can be found on the whiteboard within the game-specific professor's laboratory, right there next to her notes on Area Zero and the phenomena which happens within. Those unaware of the story of these games, the games end by you going into the mysterious Area Zero, the central great crater of the Paldea region, in an attempt to find and help one of your friend's parents, that being the game-specific professor. They have created a time machine and have been pulling Paradox Pokemon from either the past or the future, depending on your version of the game, and now they need your help to turn the time machine off before it brings so many Paradox Pokemon to the present that it upsets the ecosystem and destroys the world. It's a time travel story. Time travel is very real in this game and its universe. And it shouldn't be surprising for you guys to hear then that all of these symbols, in some way or another, pertain to time travel. And so that's what this video is going to be about. It's going to be me going over what I think these symbols specifically mean. Also, shout out to YouTuber Hoops and Hip Hop, who, while editing this video, I saw he posted a video about almost this exact same thing. So if you want more content about this, go check that out too. Getting started with, I think, the easiest one of the bunch, let's look at these little hexagons. Again, we see that they were drawn in some notes by the author of the Scarlet/Violet book, Heath. He said that he was unconscious, and then when he woke up, he found himself in an unfamiliar place with the notes in his hand, which really sounded like he went into some kind of trance and wrote them out without realizing what he was doing, almost as if he was affected by something down in the crater. Obviously, in the story, this is just an excuse for the book not to spell out what the notes mean, by having even their author not know. But I think it's obvious that he came upon some kind of inspiration for something. Because if we look, there's a note pointing at the center of the hexagon, which is a more narrow hexagon, more in line with the symbol for the terrestrial phenomenon, the gimmick for this particular game, the battle gimmick, which also draws its origin from Area Zero. The reason that Area Zero is special seems to be because it's full of huge Terra crystals, which give off terrestrial energy. I think it's pretty obvious then that what this is some sort of formula for using terrestrial energy to create a tunnel through time. And that those tunnels, as we see here in this second drawing containing a bunch of hexagons, is just hexagon shaped. And this idea is further supported in the fact that the symbol we see in the corners of the pages on the book and in the game logo actually look less like what Heath drew and more like a top-down view of the time machine itself. And looking at that second drawing containing a bunch of hexagons, the tunnel-shaped one, I think it becomes pretty obvious what the triangle symbols on the metal plate are too. I've seen some people online saying that this resembles an hourglass, a symbol for time, just in general. But there's definitely more to it than that. Most hourglasses don't have a section where the two halves of it overlap and make a container in the middle. What I think it's meant to represent more so than an hourglass is the light cone, or the null cone, which is fitting since null and zero basically mean the same thing, and this, I think, is a symbol which represents Area Zero itself. I think this is a symbol telling whoever knows what it means that Area Zero is a place where the past and the future can connect with the present. And I know what some of you guys might want to say to that each game only has Pokemon coming from one or the other, the past or the future. So why would there be a symbol that can be found in both games which indicates that both are possible in either game world? And that's because if you follow the storyline of the professor, if you read her notes as you're going down through Area Zero, or his notes if you're playing Violet version, you have the male professor instead, it's absolutely clear that both professors started working on this project together, back when they set up the lab in that lighthouse, that lab with that squiggly P and T-shaped symbol on the whiteboard, and that shortly after their child was born, they went their separate ways. I think over some disagreement as to whether or not to pursue time travel into the past or time travel into the future. And then it created a sort of multiverse split, that the two versions of the game exist in parallel universes, one where Professor Seda, the one that wanted to visit the past, stayed and continued her research, and the other where Professor Torre, the one who wanted to travel into the future, stayed and continued his. Which means that both are possible in either game world. But if you don't believe just from the overlapping triangles that this is a symbol for Area Zero itself, this metal plate also has a map of the Paldea region on it with a plus sign, or maybe even if you turn your head a little bit, an X, marking Area Zero. This tells us that even long before Heath and his expedition went into Area Zero in the past, someone already knew that this is a place where time intersects with itself, which is why I feel that this one is so cut and dry. The next one I want to go over is this series of 4 circles with triangles or angles drawn in them that we can find on the ground in Area Zero. Since out of the 2 remaining symbols, it's the one that I'm most confident that I know what it means. I think this symbol here is a symbol for the timeline being split into multiple realities. There's a theory that's very pervasive throughout the Pokemon community right now that Area Zero is the crater made by the firing of the crystalline ultimate weapon from the past lore of the Pokemon X and Y games. Though I suppose that does technically contradict the timeline for the games, which says the crater was there earlier than that, but maybe the crater was, and the blast from the weapon just activated whatever was already there, or maybe even woke it up. But that's potentially a topic for another day. But basically it goes that this tall boy here, AZ, which is of course the initials for Area Zero, fired the weapon at someone that his region, Kalos, was at war with, That being Paldea, which, based on regular geography, should be right next to Kalos, and made the great crater in his attempt at ending the war, killing a lot of people in the process, but also charging the area with so much energy that it gave Area Zero the properties that it has now, creating the time travel phenomenon, or the possibility of it anyway, and the terrestrial phenomenon all at the same time. And this is also what, at least as far as I've been able to research myself, is where we think the Mega Evolution universe and the non-Mega Evolution universe, yes, that is a thing in Pokemon. Some universes and some games have Mega Evolution and some don't, because they exist in different realities, split off from one another. That it was the firing of this weapon, the impact of this weapon, that split the timeline and caused that to be true. So these 4 circles that touch each other and even make a solid square in the middle, but have these different angles pointing off in different directions, I think this is representative of the multiverse being created by the blast from this weapon. Because, this shows us 4 universes, theoretically, whereas the weapon seemingly only created 2. But we don't know that for sure. For example, the events of Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, which seem to be an alternate retelling of the Generation 1 story that precludes the character Red from being the protagonist of that story, seems to be yet another separate Pokemon universe within the Pokemon multiverse. Maybe that's what the third of these 4 circles is, and that there's just another one out there that we don't know about yet, that was also created at this same time. I don't know how ancient peoples would have known that this happened, to then make a symbol for it and carve it into the ground here, but it's definitely possible. This brings us to the last of the symbols, one that looks most like writing out of all of these. In fact, it looks a lot like it could be stylized lettering from some of the actual in-universe Pokemon languages that we've seen before. None of them really match up perfectly, but, who knows? And maybe it's stylized, or maybe there's still a language that we haven't seen before. If that's the case, then it could just be, somebody's initials or something. But when I look at it, and this is just a hunch, it really looks like some sort of mathematical shorthand. Something like pi, a symbol that in and of itself represents a larger concept, so that you don't have to write out the entire thing each time you want to plug it into an equation. And considering that it's on the whiteboard in the lab of the 2 professors who were researching time travel, on what we presume is a board where they were writing out their time travel theories, I think that makes a lot of sense as a hypothesis. The only hiccup I can find in this theory is that it's also depicted in the Scarlet/Violet book, in the margin. But if you look here, again, it's within a circle, so it's kind of rounded off comparatively. So even though the symbol in the book seems to predate its use by the professors, I think it's possible that when they were creating their theory, they just took a symbol from the Scarlet book and modified it to be their shorthand mathematical symbol for their time travel theory. That it was sort of their way of honoring the work that had been done leading up to them being able to do their work now. This is, I think, by far the biggest stretch of any of these, but I still think it's reasonable enough. And even though I highly doubt that we're going to be explicitly told what these symbols mean in the upcoming DLC, it's always possible that we will, or that we'll get more clues as to what they mean. It'll help us decipher them further. So I'm really looking forward to seeing if that happens, because I'd really like to know if I'm right about any of this, All that said, what do you think of my thoughts in this video? I'd say, what do you think of this theory, but it's not really a cohesive theory. What are your thoughts on these symbols? If you've played through the games, do you have any ideas what they might be that I might have missed? Let's get a discussion going in the comments section down below, and while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else who you think would enjoy my content, subscribe if you haven't. You can also check out links to my various social media, as well as the many ways you can help out the channel. Those will be in the video description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.